For the last 16 months, outside of our sister congregation, Kol Neshama in Jerusalem, one of the flagship synagogues of our Israeli Reform movement, hung a large banner of the now released hostage, Karina Ariev. Her cousin Anna is the executive director of the congregation and made sure that it stayed there facing the very busy intersection Somet Oranim, where the building is located, for nearly 500 days. Karina found out about the banner upon her return from captivity, was touched by it, and asked that the congregation waited until she was back in Jerusalem and strong enough to take it down with them. Earlier this week, she joined her cousin and her sister and the congregation's rabbi, Oded Mazor, to finally remove the banner. In this celebratory moment, the small team also hung a new banner that says, "Karina returned home, and we will continue until everyone is back." In its strange way, as we bring in Adar today, and with it anticipate Purim and its jolliness, I couldn't think of a better image at this time to symbolize our current and complicated relationship with this Jewish month of joy. We first learn that joy is a crucial choice to make in Judaism. In the chapter about Adar in her book, From Time to Time, Journeys in the Jewish Calendar, our friend and colleague in Israel, Rabbi Dr. Dalia Marks, cites a midrash, which relates that the Torah was forced upon the Israelites at Mount Sinai. It teaches that God upended a mountain above the people of Israel like a bathtub and said, "If you accept the Torah, then excellent, and if you don't, you will face your burial." However, later on in the text, it's elaborated that the Israelites had indeed already chosen Torah and chosen it willingly. When had they chosen it, you might ask? In the time of Achashverosh, and there is a verse that the rabbis use from the Megillah to prove this notion. This midrash, according to Rabbi Marks, indicates how daring and how vital it is to accept Torah specifically as a choice and a personal decision. Purim, and by extension the month of Adar, then becomes about celebrating joy through celebrating our ability and our freedom to choose in joy. Put differently, Torah is our source of joy and the place from which we draw much of our joy. The words we sing as we return the Torah to the ark, Etz Chaim Chi L'machazikim ba v'tomchei me'oshar, it's a tree of life to those who hold fast to it, and all of its supporters are happy. They ring in our ears and remind us that we are compelled to make that choice in joy every day. Joy, however, does not mean that everything is easy or that everything is perfect. Far from it. From the time that Adar begins, we are reminded of the Talmudic adage, Mi shenichnas Adar marbin besimcha, the one who welcomes in Adar increases in joy. Whilst Adar is a happy time, and with that, Purim is a happy festival, it doesn't mean, again, citing Rabbi Marx's wisdom, that it lacks a serious side or thought. Purim raises interesting questions about happiness, where we find happiness, or about how or if we summon happiness when it doesn't happen naturally to us. Purim, after all, is again a joyous festival, but I want to point out that it's not necessarily a joyous story. An orphan is compelled to hide her identity in order to marry up. She's endangered by a schemer in their midst who seeks the destruction of her people, and this schemer very nearly succeeds. Of course, Esther is triumphant, and from there we derive our celebrations. We can acknowledge that in our day and age, it's complicated. Rabbi Marx points out that we live in a culture of instant gratification which seeks to block out all sorrow and despair. Intertwined with our Jewish ethos of directing our actions towards tikkun olam, these acts of repairing, of improving the world, and other such lofty goals, a strange hybrid is then formed in which we must always want to feel good and must always want to avoid the suffering, the bad things. Yet Rabbi Marx reminds us that whilst we of course don't wish for suffering, we must not underestimate the importance of sadness or frustration as essential states of mind that enable us to learn about ourselves or that motivate us towards action. What she intends by this when she says this is to echo the call of the psalmist to rejoice with trembling, to reflect on what moves us towards meaning and wholeness, to experience happiness that is real, not because it means the absence of pain or the ignoring of everything that's difficult, but because it is happiness infused with creativity and commitment to tikkun, the reparation of our broken world. This means that we can rejoice unequivocally in Karina being with her family and her community, safe and home and able to choose and be with them to take down that banner after they waited for so long and fought so hard. And at the same time, we can tremble as we work on behalf of the other hostages, those who, like Karina, have a lengthy rehabilitation journey ahead, those who await a dignified burial, those who remain alive and waiting in Gaza. All of these things can be true. And in fact, we learn that joy means striving for a more perfect world. As we read Parashat Truma this week, we read of the start of the construction of the Mishkan, the desert tabernacle. Rabbi Shai Held, in his book, The Heart of Torah, will make a fascinating comparison between this Mishkan and the Garden of Eden, that paradise. He cites a number of midrashim which teach that Adam was created on the site where the temple would be established, that show Adam bringing sacrifices to a great altar, donning the priestly clothing, and eventually being shown the destruction of the temple as a cautionary tale. Rabbi Held puzzles over what these two far apart stories could have in common and realizes, well, quite a lot on this quest for wholeness and joy. The Garden of Eden is the symbol for all that is good, all that theoretically makes us happy. Blessings and life and knowledge and order and communication, all of which can feel like a far cry from the world that we live in. Its vision lives on in our religious consciousness as a reflection of human harmony on earth, and with it, the hope for tikkun, restoration. The Mishkan, Rabbi Held argues, also serves as an island of Eden in the biblical era, one which, like today, was decidedly non-Edenic. For example, we note their similar physical descriptions of being guarded by golden cherubs and the menorah that Moses is instructed to craft, sounding strikingly similar to a tree, with trees of life being a common motif in the ancient world. As Adam is tasked with tilling and tending the garden, so too are the Levites tasked with tilling and tending the Mishkan. We therefore link the Garden of Eden and the Edenic Mishkan, connected across our texts and tradition, to represent the possibility of perfect happiness, inspired by these two periods of perfection. As we conclude, Mishenichnas Adar marbin b'simcha, the one who welcomes in joy, in Adar increases in joy. In our current heartbreaks and our happinesses, I'd say that we need Purim, especially this year. As we will hear the Megillah, as we'll prepare care packages, as we will laugh at the spiel, as we revel in our family carnival and our congregational pub night, my hope is that we can fly a new banner, that we can make our world feel right, even if just for that morning or just for that night. The world is hard, but Purim allows us to forget about that world just for a moment and to just be in that perfect moment. And for a moment, things might just feel a little more joyful, just a little more perfect. Shabbat Shalom.